Some families break apart over big things, inheritances, betrayal, secrets. Mine. It all started with a wedding. My sister's wedding. And it was the day I realised I was never really part of the family in the way I thought. I'm Claire Weston, 33, a financial consultant living in Boston. Growing up, I was the stable daughter, the one who fixed things, the one who didn't make waves. My little sister Sophie. She was the golden one, the kind of child who drew attention just by existing artsy, magnetic, everyone's favourite. And I didn't mind. Not really. I loved Sophie. I raised her in ways my parents Marilyn and Richard never quite did. From teaching her how to ride a bike to helping her get through a rough breakup in college, I was always her person. When she met Ethan at a gallery opening, I saw how she lit up in a way I hadn't seen before. They made sense, her wild heart balanced by his steady calm. When she called me one snowy December morning, screaming into the phone that she was engaged, I cried. Of course I'd be her maid of honour. There was never a doubt. We dove into planning with the kind of joy only sisters can share. Fabric swatches, Pinterest boards, floral mock-ups. My tiny apartment looked like a bridal war zone. We would meet every Sunday for coffee and planning. It was our ritual, but something shifted one night at a family dinner. Sophie and I had been shortlisting venues when Marilyn, our mother, arrived with a smug smile and a thick leather-bound wedding planner. She flipped it open and announced that she'd already booked the Clayton estate for the ceremony. No discussion. No vote. Sophie looked surprised but didn't resist. Mom, Claire and I were still comparing venues. The Clayton book's up a year in advance, Marilyn said, tapping the table. We got lucky with a cancellation. It's perfect, trust me. I swallowed my disappointment. I told myself it's just a venue. Let it go. I didn't know that was just the beginning. Suddenly, I found myself being left out of key decisions. Vendors I researched were dropped for Mum's trusted connections. The colours Sophie and I chose were dismissed as dreary. Bridesmaids' dresses were picked without my input. Hayley Ross, one of Sophie's college friends, started showing up in all the planning photos. Cake tastings, floral consultations, things I thought were mine to share with Sophie. Liam, my boyfriend, tried to be the voice of reason. Maybe it's temporary, he said. Planning a wedding brings out the crazy in everyone. But I felt it deep in my gut something was wrong. Then came the final blow. Sophie went wedding dress shopping without me. I didn't even know until a coworker asked if I liked her choice. When I confronted Sophie, she looked uncomfortable. We just did a preliminary look. Hayley was free. You've been so busy with work, Claire. I would have made time, I said, stunned. You could have asked. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that Sophie didn't realise how much it hurt, that maybe she'd explain everything and we'd laugh about it like we used to over too sweet wine and late-night reruns of old sitcoms. But the silence stretched on. No apology, no follow-up. Instead, invitations started going out for the bridal shower, an event I wasn't involved in planning. I got a generic evite. No personal message, no phone call. And when I offered to help, I was told it's already handled. By Hayley, of course. I smiled through it. I bought an expensive gift, wore a cheerful dress, and posed for pictures like nothing was wrong. Because that's what I always did, show up smile support. But inside, something cracked a little more. Then came the bachelorette trip. It was a weekend getaway to Aspen, booked and finalised before I even heard about it. I was asked to Venmo my share of the rental over $800, but never consulted about the location, theme or schedule. When I gently asked Sophie why I was being left out of planning her events, she hesitated. Hayley just has more free time lately. And she's been great at organising things. Organising things I was supposed to be doing, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked away. You've just been really intense lately, Claire. Everything feels like too much when you get involved. That sentence, it echoed in my mind for days. Too much. I wasn't sure what I'd done to deserve being erased, but clearly it was easier for them without me. I told myself it would pass, that after the wedding we'd go back to being sisters, that this was just stress and manipulation from our mother, something Sophie couldn't see through yet, until that May afternoon. It was a warm Saturday. We were all gathered at our parents' house for a barbecue. Liam had wandered off to help my dad with the grill, and I went inside for a glass of water. That's when I heard it. My name. I froze in the hallway outside the kitchen. She's always been controlling, my mother's voice said. Claire wants everything her way. Sophie's finally opening her eyes. That's true, Hayley's voice joined in. It's exhausting always walking on eggshells around her. She acts like she's the only one who cares. They were talking about me, casually, like I wasn't family, just a burden. I stood there rooted in place. The glass of water in my hand trembled. My face burned with shame and disbelief. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Not because of the words, but because Sophie had let it happen. She hadn't defended me. The next morning I texted her, "We need to talk, about the wedding, about us." Her reply came 8 hours later. "Come to Mom and Dad's Thursday at 7. We'll talk then." 5 days. I rehearsed what I'd say, practiced staying calm. I even wrote it all down. This was my chance to make her see the truth, to make her remember who I'd been to her all her life. When I walked into my childhood living room that Thursday night, the scene hit me like a punch to the gut. Sophie sat on the edge of the couch, twisting her fingers in her lap, eyes downcast. Marilyn, our mother, stood behind her like a sentry. Hayley was in my usual seat, legs crossed, a polite smirk on her lips. No one offered me a chair. I remained standing. "What's going on?" I asked quietly. Sophie looked at our mother. "I thought we were here to talk privately." "We are," Marilyn said, "and we're going to settle this calmly. But you need to understand that this wedding is about Sophie and what makes her feel safe and supported. I've been supporting her since she was 5. I shot back. "Are we really pretending that's changed?" Sophie finally spoke, voice small. "It's just been a lot lately, Claire. Every time you get involved, things get stressful." "Stressful?" I repeated. "Or just inconvenient for Mum's plans?" That's when Marilyn stepped between us, literally. "Claire," she said, her voice like ice, "Sophie has decided that she wants a calm, joyful wedding. And frankly, your presence would make that difficult." I felt my chest tighten. My hands tingled. "You're uninvited," she added bluntly. "You're no longer the maid of honor. Hayley is." Sophie didn't look up. I turned to Hayley, who met my gaze with a little victorious glint. I forced a smile. "Congratulations," I said flatly. "I hope you enjoy the role I was supposed to have in my sister's life." "No hard feelings," Hayley replied smoothly. "It's not personal." That was the last thing I heard before walking out the door slowly with dignity. But inside I was unraveling. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and unshed tears. I had to pull over twice just to breathe. Liam was waiting when I got back. He held me as I sobbed on the kitchen floor. I didn't sleep that night, and when the morning light filtered through my windows, it brought clarity with it. This wasn't about a wedding. It was about power. It was about my mother controlling the narrative, controlling Sophie, and casting me out the moment I stopped being useful. So, I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and began reclaiming my boundaries. The honeymoon fund cancelled. Hotel reservations refunded. I sent a polite but final email to the travel agent I'd worked with for 6 months, letting her know I was no longer involved. For once, I chose myself, and it wouldn't be the last time. The following days were strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just hollow. My phone buzzed endlessly with missed calls and unread messages. I didn't check them. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to hear whatever excuses or manipulations my family had concocted this time. Instead, I spent the morning in Boston's public garden, letting the spring air sting my cheeks. I sat near the pond, watching ducks glide over water that shimmered in the sunlight. Everything looked normal. But inside, I felt like someone had carved out a piece of me and left it bleeding. Sophie and I had shared everything for 30 years, from bunk beds to broken hearts. And now she had let someone else, our mother, erase me from her most important day, without even asking why. I called Julia my best friend. She met me at our usual lunch spot, with wide eyes and an anxious hug. "I've been waiting for you to call," she said. I didn't want to push, but I heard things from a couple of mutual friends. I blinked. "What kind of things?" She took a slow sip of her iced tea, then leaned in. "Last month at the Williams dinner party, your mum was talking about you subtly but clearly." saying the family was walking on eggshells around you, that you've been emotionally unstable since Christmas. People were concerned, Claire. My blood turned to ice. What? She's been planting seeds, Julia said. Little comments here and there, not direct enough to seem cruel, just enough to make people second-guess you. I clenched my fists in my lap, fighting the urge to cry right there at the table. She's doing this to everyone, I whispered. She's gaslighting your entire circle, Julia confirmed. And unless we do something, she's going to get away with it. That night, I finally turned my phone back on. 28 missed calls. Dozens of texts. A voicemail from my father. Claire, I'm so sorry. I didn't know until yesterday. Please call me when you can. One from my grandmother. Are you all right, sweetheart? Your mother says you're not feeling well. I just want to hear your voice. Even Uncle David had left a lecture about respecting your parents, but not everyone believed her. My Aunt Lorraine had sent a message too. Call me when you're ready. You're not the only one Marilyn has tried to erase. I've been there. Those words hit like lightning. I called her immediately. She didn't sound surprised to hear from me. Your mother's been rewriting history for decades, she said. She did it to me once. Convinced the whole family I was unstable because I called her out on something she didn't want to admit. It took me 5 years to recover my reputation. She paused, voice softening. You have a choice, Claire. You can walk away quietly, or you can stop the pattern. That same evening, Liam called from work. He sounded urgent. You need to hear this. I talked to Ethan. I froze, Sophie's fiancé. He came to see me, said he needed to talk to someone neutral. He's been confused for weeks about why you weren't responding to their messages. When I told him you never got anything, he started digging. What did he find? Liam exhaled. Claire, your mother was intercepting your messages. She created a fake contact in Sophie's phone with your name, but it was her number. Every time you texted Sophie, your mum got it instead. My jaw dropped. She deleted messages, rewrote others. Sophie thought you were flaking on her, cold, uninvolved. It's deliberate, calculated. I sank into the couch, knees trembling. It was worse than I imagined. She lied to Sophie, I whispered. To everyone. Worse still, Ethan had proof. He'd found screenshots on Marilyn's tablet, organised folders of fake conversations she'd fabricated. When they compared timestamps and phone records, it all unravelled. And suddenly it all made sense. The confusion, the sudden coldness, the subtle shift from closeness to distance. She hadn't just manipulated Sophie. She'd isolated me. I knew what I had to do. I called Aunt Lorraine and asked for help organising a family meeting. Not a confrontation, a reckoning. We met in her living room 2 nights later. Sophie arrived looking pale and withdrawn. She barely met my eyes. Ethan was with her, holding her hand tightly. Dad came too hesitant, unsure, but there. Even Grandma Ruth, frail but sharp as ever, had insisted on attending after hearing conflicting stories from Marilyn. When Marilyn walked in late, of course, her smile vanished the moment she saw the stack of folders on the coffee table. I stood and addressed the room. These are screenshots of fake conversations my mother created between me and Sophie. Here are phone records proving text message tampering. Here are bank statements showing I funded their honeymoon and cancelled it the moment I was cut out. I paused, turning to Marilyn. I have receipts. Literally. The room was silent. Then Lorraine spoke up. She did the same to me years ago. Different context. Same tactics. James nodded. She tried to paint Claire as toxic. But once we started investigating, it was obvious. I turned to Sophie. Did you really believe I just abandoned you, Soph? After everything we've shared? Tears filled her eyes. I didn't know what to think anymore, she whispered. She made me doubt myself. She made me doubt you. Marilyn tried to defend herself. She said she was just trying to protect the wedding, that she was worried about my negative energy. But no one was buying it anymore. Sophie stood up. Claire will be my maid of honour, she said clearly, as she always was. If you can't accept that and treat her with respect, then your role in my life and in this wedding will be limited. It was the first time I'd ever seen her stand up to our mother. And in that moment, something changed. Not just between us, but inside me. For the first time in years, I stopped trying to earn love from someone who only saw me as competition. The air felt different after that night. Heavier, but clearer, like the sky after a thunderstorm. There was still damage, still puddles left behind. But the lies had cracked wide open, and the truth was finally breathing. Sophie called me the next morning. "I don't know where to begin," she whispered, voice raw from crying. "I feel like I've woken up from a dream or a nightmare. I was so convinced you didn't care, that you didn't want to be involved." I sat in silence for a moment, letting her words wash over me. Then I said gently, "You were convinced because someone worked very hard to make you feel that way." She sniffed. "I wish I could erase the last few months." "I don't," I said, honestly. "As awful as it's been, it brought everything to light. It showed us the truth. And maybe now we can finally build something real, something healthy." There was a pause then, a quiet, almost childlike voice. "Will you still be my maid of honor?" 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, but in the center of it all, there was still love. "Yes," I said, "but only under one condition." "Anything," she breathed. "We plan it together. No more lies, no more games, just us." "Deal," she whispered. That weekend, I met Sophie at the bridal boutique, not for the first fitting, which I'd missed, but for the final alterations. She stood in front of the mirror radiant in ivory lace, and for a moment I saw the little girl I used to tuck in at night. "When did my big sister get so wise?" she asked with a grin. "Probably around the time my little sister got so brave," I replied, adjusting her veil. We smiled through tears. But the road back wasn't easy. In the days that followed, Marilyn cycled through every manipulation tactic in her book. Icy silence, tearful apologies, rage-fueled voicemails, guilt-laden texts. I was only trying to protect the family. "You made me the villain in my own daughter's life," I wrote back. "That's not protection. That's control." Dad, to his credit, surprised us all. After decades of choosing peace over confrontation, he finally stood his ground. He told Marilyn she needed to respect the new boundaries, that if she wanted to be part of the wedding and our lives, she had to start with accountability. To my shock, she agreed to see a therapist. Not because she suddenly understood the harm she'd caused, but because Dad insisted. I didn't expect miracles, and I still don't. Change, if it comes at all, will take time and it won't erase the past, but it was a start. Meanwhile, I returned to the wedding with a different mindset. I wasn't the fixer anymore. I wasn't the woman who would sacrifice her time, energy, and mental health just to hold everything together while everyone else threw stones. This time, I had boundaries. I helped coordinate the bridesmaids. Yes, but I didn't drop everything for every little emergency. I worked with the florist and the venue staff, but I didn't let anyone talk down to me or override my input. I offered suggestions, not sacrifices. Even Liam noticed. "You're glowing lately," he said one night while we went over the seating charts. "I think I'm just lighter," I replied. "It feels good not to carry everything alone." Sophie and I started seeing each other weekly again, not just for wedding tasks, but for real sisterhood. We talked about the past, the damage, the way Marilyn's words had twisted our bond for years. It wasn't easy. Sometimes it hurt more to remember what we had than to face what we'd lost. But we were healing together. The wedding day finally arrived in early June. The morning was soft and golden. I stood beside Sophie in the bridal suite, adjusting her veil one last time. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. She looked at me in the mirror. "I wouldn't be standing here like this if it weren't for you." When we walked down the aisle, it felt like we were stepping into a new chapter, not just in her life, but in ours. As I held her bouquet and watched her say her vows to Ethan, I didn't think about the months of silence or the pain. I thought about the strength it took to get here. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. No drama, no unexpected guests. Marilyn sat in the second row, silent, composed, careful. She had been given conditions she could attend, but only if she respected the process. Any manipulation, any scene, and she would be escorted out. She didn't test us. Afterward, at the reception, she approached me cautiously. "The therapist says I need to work on acknowledging others' strengths without feeling diminished," she said awkwardly, sipping from her champagne glass. I raised an eyebrow. "That sounds accurate." "I know I've got a long way to go," she added. "I don't expect forgiveness right away." "You're right," I said gently. "Forgiveness isn't something you get just for asking. It's something you earn through change." She nodded and walked away. I didn't feel triumphant, just grounded. The following weeks brought more clarity. Liam and I took a weekend trip to Vermont to our favourite overlook spot in the mountains. While the sun was setting, casting everything in amber and rose, he pulled out a ring. To new beginnings, he said, "Will you marry me?" I laughed through tears. Yes, but on one condition. He tilted his head. Only one. I grinned. No drama, small committee, clear boundaries. He laughed. Deal. Life doesn't magically fix itself after a big fight or one family meeting. But it does shift subtly, quietly, when you decide you're no longer going to play the same old role in someone else's script. I'm no longer the family's fixer. I'm Claire Weston, and I finally know my worth.